Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's Space Engineers Plus Me, Episode 3. I'm Enigmius, and today we're going to begin the process of moving everything from our lander down to the bottom of the mountain all the way up to the top of the mountain. But this is about 3 hours of gameplay squished down into just barely over 16 minutes. So the trips up and down the mountain, we're not going to make you sit through those. We're not going to make you sit through me down in the lander trying to figure out what to take and why. We're just going to kind of take a look at some of the things that I was building and some of the things that didn't quite work out as I may have hoped. What I'm building specifically right here is the frame that's going to hold our first batch of solar panels. We were provided with enough materials to make a handful of solar panels as part of the inventory of the lander. So that's one of the first things that I wanted to do, is get some power set up here, and then we can worry about getting the rest of the equipment up here so that we have something to use to power with. Hopefully it'll work out. Now, after the last episode, a bunch of people were very enthusiastic about the idea of me moving the lander up here to the top of the mountain so that it would be much easier to just kind of transfer things back and forth and potentially even connect the lander to the early beginnings of this base, as it were, so that we can take advantage of the inventory and all these other things without having to strip the lander and then build them inside the base. All would have been exceptional ideas and things that we could take advantage of, but for one problem that nobody could have foreseen, and that was a bit of a glitch with the lander itself and the shape that it was in after I loaded the game. See, I had two saves. I had a save that I made that was supposed to be the main save, and then a couple minutes of goofing around after that, I decided, you know what, I should probably make a second save as sort of a backup. So I made the second save, and then when I loaded the first save and went to the lander to try and grab some materials to bring up to the mountain and potentially, get it squared away and kind of make some decisions about flying it up the mountain, I noticed some problems that weren't present when I had saved the game. Specifically, there was a gigantic hole torn in the underside of the lander and one of the sides of the lander with one of the control thrusters, if I can say that. The control thruster was completely gone. It was one of the big beefy ones, and I've actually got a little bit of footage that we'll show you momentarily here that's basically just that. It's the outside of the lander from the backup save. What was very weird about this is that if you load the first save, which was 2.5 minutes before the backup save, it has this huge gaping hole in the underside of the lander. Not only was the control thruster gone, but a lot of the equipment was gone, including our med bay, which was kind of a disappointing turn of events because I didn't really want to have to gather materials to make another one of those. I just wanted to basically take it apart and put it in our base. So then I loaded the backup save that was 2.5 minutes after all of this, and there's still some damage, but not as bad. The control thruster is gone. There's a small hole in the hull of the lander where the control thruster was, but everything else inside is intact. All of the other machines inside were intact, and I was like, okay, this is the one that we're going to use, but it just seemed obvious that somehow between the time that we saved the game and the time we loaded that save, all this damage happened to the lander, and then loading in the backup save, which happened last, some of the damage had been repaired. There's only so many ways we can describe these things other than the word bug, which is fine to an extent. It's early access. We can be expecting these kinds of things. So the one, of course, downside to this is that a lander that's missing one of only two control thrusters isn't flying anywhere. That's kind of the thing. Now, realistically speaking, if I really wanted to save myself the time running up and down the mountain with goodies, I could have maybe looked into gathering enough materials from the other thrusters on the lander to reconstruct the control thruster and put that guy in place and then fly it up anyway. Could have been a thing. I kind of had my mind set on the idea of just running up and down the hill anyways, not because I disagreed with the people who suggested flying up the lander. That was one of the things that I had considered as well, just because I didn't want to put myself in a position where I'm flying up onto the top of the mountain with a lander and then I either collide with my base and wreck some things there, or just not have a very good landing and break more things. One way or the other, running up and down seemed like the better option for me in terms of what I was prepared to do, so that's what I did. And of course, made a very distinct effort to not bore the crap out of you guys with all the trips up and down the mountain that I had to make, which is probably in and around 10 trips up to this point. Now you can see I've got some batteries that we're placing. We were given materials to make a couple of batteries as alongside the materials to make the solar panels. The downside with making batteries this way is that the battery blocks are very large, and you need a lot of them to make each battery unit. The battery blocks is one of the subcomponents of the battery unit that we're making, the larger device. So I can't make one battery with what I can carry up the hill. So I have to grab some of what I can carry, or basically I can grab everything that I can carry that's only some of what's necessary to build one of the batteries, and then I run up the hill and I weld up the battery as far as it will go with what I have on hand, and then I get back down to the hill and grab some more battery blocks. That took a while. Then I wanted to get rid of all of the materials for our solar panels. I'm not opposed at all to the idea of having as many solar panels as we were given materials to make. More power is, I don't think, ever going to be a bad thing. So it's just, again, a case of running up and down and grabbing everything that's necessary and everything that I can carry, welding it as far as it'll go, running back down, getting more mats, back up. It took a while. Like I say, 3 hours total to get to where we are going to be at the end of this, but from this we will have a bunch of solar panels, a couple battery blocks. We're going to put some inventory space in here, which is another big kind of achievement. It's so much easier when you can just drop off everything you're not using immediately at the top of the hill, so that you have more space to grab things down to the bottom of the hill and bring it back up. So we are going to get some inventory in place up here. We're going to get a control seat, if for no other reason, so that we can charge up our suit. I'm not worried about having to control anything in our base up to this point. I am just worried about making sure that we can keep our suit in good working order. I also decided that for the basics, the very beginnings of our base, I'm going to do the whole thing underneath here. We're going to burrow through the rock. We're going to clear away as much rock as we need to clear away. And we're going to put all of the critical systems conveniently and safely located under a big chunk of rock, so that if, NPCs come flying through the atmosphere, as it warned might be the case, they're going to have to work real hard if they're going to want to get down to where all of our goodies are and destroy them. Which, I mean, at this point, we're not really in much of a position to mount a defense anyways, but we can pretend. We can pretend that making the enemy work real hard to get through our first layer of defenses is going to be something that's going to save our butt. It seemed, and I'm not going to say it was the case, but it very much seemed like every time I went down the hill, there were more solar panel components that I could bring up here and make even more solar panels. What I read from the little displays inside the lander was that there were materials to make 2 solar panels. Maybe I misread it, or maybe I read it properly at the time and then it got jumbled in my brain somehow. But every time I go down there, it's just more stuff to make solar panels, so I bring it up here and we make solar panels. It's not exactly complaining, but at the same time, looking forward to getting to that spot where the lander is basically stripped down to absolutely nothing, and all of the materials and components and machines are up here on the top of the mountain, so we can get down to the business of prospecting some ores and filling this base out, so that it's something we can step back and look up at and say, wow, we're really happy with that because it's cool. Right now it's just kind of barely functional, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of recovering the lander, but it's going to take a little while longer, I'm afraid. I just didn't want to leave too many days in between videos where people are wondering, or people were kind of looking forward to a video every other day, and then it's not there. Why? Because I wanted to cut down to 5 or 6 hours instead of 2 or 3. This is probably the better solution, I think. And this chair, this poor chair that I placed just so that I could recharge the energy in my suit, is going to get moved several times. I decided it would be neat to have the chair looking out from a window. I don't know exactly why I thought that, because when you get into the chair, it actually shows you a camera view behind the station. It's like outside the station and behind. So you don't ever really get a chance to see the view from the chair unless you're just standing beside it. So that was another one of those things. Just you learn as you go. And this is the example of putting in the inventory, and then all these things that I've been carrying around, I can dump in the inventory, leave them at the top of the mountain. When I go down to the bottom of the mountain to pick things up, I've got a little bit more space. I had a bunch of ice in the lander. I don't know if it all got refined and used up, but it's basically gone now. The ice is gone. This is the lander, before and after. You saw we have the control thruster on one side. We come around this side, great big hole where the thruster was. You can see the machines inside from the hole in the hull. And that's just the way it was when I loaded it in from the save. So I kind of wanted to make sure you guys had an opportunity to see that before I went back up the hill and finished placing all of these things like solar panels, more blocks, more windows that don't necessarily matter. The ice that I had, I'm not too worried about it disappearing. Like I say, whether it got used and vented into the atmosphere, I don't really know. But all of the snow that you see in the environment, when you harvest it, becomes ice that we can use to make oxygen and hydrogen. So one of the next things that I'm going to do as sort of a priority is grab the machines from the lander and bring them up here so that we can produce and store oxygen and hydrogen. We'll have the med bay set up down or up here, down, up. I can't even tell anymore. And with those basic things, then we can start looking at the other things that we have to work with, the other machines that we can pull apart. There's a refinery in the lander that we definitely want to bring up here so that we can refine the ores that we will hopefully one day find. And once we start getting a reasonable sort of setup where we've got places to go to get ores in a reasonable quantity and everything that we need to be able to make at our base to power the oxygen, the hydrogen, that's when we settle into the routine of gather, build, expand, crazy cool things being built on platforms that may or may not ever fly, but are kind of something to mess around with and see how things work. All of this stuff I'm kind of looking forward to, and all of it will take place once we get all this taken care of. So I'm going to let you guys watch the rest of this. We're just going to put together, I think that's all we had for the solar panels, but right now I'm going to put together a little bit of shenanigan with windows, move the seat, get a floor built. All the little things you take for granted. Floors and windows, we have to build our own, but we've got lots of materials, we've got lots of stuff coming up from the lander. And the next episode, by the end of the next episode, we should have the lander completely dismantled and all of the basics up and running at the top of the mountain. And basically everything prepared for our first exploratory adventures on this planet that we've really only seen from two specific points, the spot at the bottom of the mountain and the spot at the top. So if you want to be notified when I add the next episode, of course, you can subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on social media. Links for that are always in the information box below the video. Please leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.